Welcome, everybody. It's been such a short time since we saw each other. How is everyone? Good? I'm just waiting for Max.
Oh, no, I mean, you're good, you're recording.
I'm recording, I'm good.
Yep.
Then we'll get to your part. Did everybody get my email that I sent out?
Yes.
Was that all helpful?
Yeah.
Wonderful
Yes.
things?
Yeah.
So I think what Max was going to do today for me was he was going to go over all the wonderful ideas that we've gotten about it. But we have two guests today who are interested in buying the house next to, two houses down from the hospital.
523 Friendship Road.
523 Friendship Road.
It's this one. It's the former White Gables farm, the Carpenter Gothic.
Yeah.
Big white barn. We have it under contract now, and we, of course, we're very excited about the possibilities to be part of the community here. But we obviously have some concerns about being, abutting this property. We want to make sure we're not making a mistake in terms of what we're buying, and the viability of the farmland there is our principal concern, and the quality of the soil. And from what we gather, there haven't been huge soil issues at this point, but serious groundwater contamination concerns. Although the ability to hook to municipal water alleviates that a bit, but the soil is a big concern.
So did you have any questions for us? We didn't want to,
Well, I know
or
that.
do you just want to listen, or I didn't know how you wanted to proceed.
We don't want to hijack your meeting with our questions either, though, because I know this is about
Well, we
the
have a
redevelopment.
public portion though, so you're allowed to hijack our meeting.
Okay. I can really hijack the heck out of a meeting, though. I can talk. So. Well, what are I guess what is the long-term, if 2 years from now, we find if our well, which is actually on the other side of the house, geologically speaking, in terms of like the groundwater geomorphology and all these things we're reading about and all of these documents we've been looking at, it doesn't feel like contamination is going to head in the direction of our well. But if in 2 years, all of a sudden our water, we no longer have viable water in our well that's safe for us or for livestock or for any future owner of the place, is there any protection for us in terms of liability? I mean, do we spend 10 grand drilling a new well, 15 grand, and all that sort of thing? Or is there anything in the long-term arrangement with lead vans and whatnot that protects the future interest of abutters?
So if it's provable that it came from that site, that is the responsibility of lead vans.
Okay, that's good to hear. We assume so.
If your neighbor next door was doing something on your other side of you,
Right.
and dumped chemicals, then that's on your neighbor.
Right.
So it has to be something coming from that site.
Well, in terms of the volatile organic compounds and whatnot, I think it would probably be pretty easy to determine, where it's coming from, unless someone's making like black market light bulbs next door or something.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but you would be amazed though, there was a huge issue where I came from in New Jersey with a property site with a neighbor, two different issues. And it took them a while to figure out whose issue it was,
Right.
because you never know.
Right.
It was a residential area, but it was a guy who did brakes his entire life from his home. And they were blaming the other commercial area, but it turned out it had been that neighbor next door. So you never know.
No, certainly.
But,
And
but that's where that liability stays with lead vans.
And we're now, in terms of soil, like, we're a little less concerned about water, because it sounds like, from what we gather, we have this option of having municipal water and sewer, perhaps, because it goes to the abutting property right now, and on our dime, perhaps we could, connect to that. Is that accurate, that we could have city water?
Are you sure it goes to the abutting properry?
I've only heard that it
No,
does.
it goes to
It goes to the
Hofstra.
Hofstra
house,
property,
excuse
but
me.
Right.
it's via the site, it's not a line along the road.
Oh, interesting.
Sylvania hooked the Hofstra property up to the town water from their site,
I
because
see.
they agreed to purchase that property back in the 60s, I think it was. They wanted to expand.
They wanted that 9 acres.
Yeah,
yes.
they wanted that 9 acres. And as part of the deal, it was, we'll give you town water, because the Hofstras, they had a well in their basement, they had a well out back. I mean, it was really not very nice.
Right.
So, yeah, they jumped at that, and that's how the water came to that house. I wasn't aware that it went any further Down,
Well-
It doesn't go farther from what I
220
gather,
on
but the
that.
town water and sewer does go to there, and I've been told by a number, like, I think you and a number of your colleagues in there suggested that it probably was okay for us to hook up to that on our dime in the future
Correct.
if we needed to.
Correct, if you wanted to.
If we wanted to, yeah, or if we needed.
Because like we had a woman, there was another woman who, remember Bob, asked about hooking up. And remember
Yes.
for water?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
it was expensive.
It was expensive.
Yeah,
You
it's
might
a lot of
wanna-
money to do it.
Test it,
Yeah,
I
check
would
that
test
out.
it and see how your water.
Yeah, well, we're not
Yeah.
particularly concerned about that now because of that option. Our larger concern now is surface contamination in soils. Now, we know that this is the heavily contaminated area. And I guess the likelihood of there being, soil deposition or something over here isn't great. And we're still having some tests done through University of Maine Cooperative Extension for organic compounds and all the other stuff they do. And we feel pretty good about it, but it's really hard to sort through all these DEP and EPA documents over time and determine what's really happened. So in what you folks have experienced, having a much longer sort of history with this problem, what is the extent of soil contamination, surface contamination adjacent to here? Has it been found elsewhere? Has it been tested? Has it been tested on abutting sites?
If I could give you a synopsis of the contamination on the site, there were a lot of, and a whole bunch of different ones, chlorinated solvents that were used on the site for cleaning industrial machinery. That's the source of the groundwater contamination. Now, what Sylvania did was they took a molybdenum mandrel and wound tungsten around it to make the light bulb filaments. And then after it was wound around the molybdenum mandrel, they dissolved out the molybdenum. Now, molybdenum is not particularly toxic to humans. It's required in some enzymes in the human body, at least according to Wikipedia. I didn't go to the original literature. But it is toxic at high levels to cattle. And there's in the municipal sludge treatment, that's one of the metals that was regulated. And I think the limit for land application of sewage sludge was 75 milligrams per kilogram. So it is toxic at some levels. But from what I remember, it's treatable by adding a little copper to your feed. And blue salt, that's a common.
Right, it binds and chelates it out or something, yeah.
yeah,
I've heard that.
But
It
it
competes
wasn't,
with the
they're,
molybdenum.
the way they remove the molybdenum, blah, 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 that stuff that you say, because it's like saying phenomenon to me, but anyway, that wasn't airborne, that was all dissolved.
No, that was all in liquid.
That was all in liquid form.
Now, there was some groundwater samples, and I remember one in particular. I think the groundwater, forgive me, because I don't recall the units, it might have been parts per billion, but don't quote me on it. But the limit was 40, and I think one of the water samples had 140 micrograms, or parts per billion.
I did read about the molybdenum and the DEP thing, and it said it was just outside of the safe limits. So while it was contaminated, it wasn't severely
That's a
contaminated.
human standard, that's not
Yeah.
a standard for cattle and ruminants.
And we haven't, and just so everybody's clear, none of us are experts, and if you
Right.
really want the answers, you need to seek legal engineering, DEP guidance, we're just
We're not gonna
an
sue them.
advisory
I
board,
hear you.
just
No,
so
no.
you know.
So those are the two things that I know of on the site.
How you doing? I got a question for you. If you're concerned about the soil, would it be reasonable for you to just take some of that soil and have it tested?
Oh,
And see where you're at with that, and then you could kind of have an idea of what you're looking at?
that's exactly what we're doing. Yes,
Right.
that's already in the works, but we kind of wanted to meet you folks and see what was
Sure.
happening, just to see there's just so many documents, it's been
Right.
hard to sort through what's happening, and
is.
everyone's been so helpful, and she sent
Yeah.
like a bunch of great stuff to us last week, which we really appreciate.
No,
Thank you.
actually, I didn't get to it till today,
Well,
but
but no, but, so
sorry.
no, that's
Right.
exactly what we're doing, but we just want
Sorry.
to know sort of like this, what the
Yeah,
local
no,
folks
I
are
hear you.
talking
And
about.
from sitting on this committee for, I don't know, 3-4 years, you're right, we're not experts. And I'll tell you, to listen to some of these hydrologists and these experts, it's amazing. I mean, stuff changes, the ground moves, water goes this way, that way, so I would assume behoove us one to really get the scientific
Yep.
data
Yep.
and what possibly could happen or is happening.
And we've been poring over that stuff, but as you know, scientific lay people too. we
Yeah,
just- Again,
yeah.
we just wanted to hear what was
Sure.
happening. And we're very I mean, we really want the property, and I think we're gonna get it.
Right.
We're also very interested in what's gonna happen there, because it's pretty exciting to potentially have some awesome neighbors there, and, you know, some sort of community site, and, you know, hiking, you know, so we're here for a bunch of reasons, not just because we're freaking out.
So where are you from, and what are you planning on growing on the property?
I'm gonna let the farmer talk.
So I live in Bodenham, from Maine. Matt's in Hollowell, and yeah, I mean we have a lot of ideas. The property, the house itself is really exciting because it's beautiful, and we can't wait to like rip up the carpet and see what's underneath. But yeah, we want to do just kind of like small scale homesteading kind of stuff. Like I'd love to have an orchard and pigs and sheep is my thing. So we'll see. We want to do everything, but
We both grew up farming and have been wanting to get back to it. I had a beef farm, and Robin has a long history in dairy farming. And I'm a restoration carpenter, have been for a long time. I was in the military for a while. I currently work in Rockport at Five Builders and Architects there as a project manager. So it's a much shorter commute from Hollowell. It's a 20-minute drive instead of an hour drive, so I'm excited about that. But I'm also I can't have a forge in downtown Hollowell, and I can have a forge in rural Waldoboro, so that's be something else that'll be popping up in the backfield there too. Spread my own contaminants.
They're only PE.
Right. I'll be making cool stuff though. So,
Do you have a business card?
I do,
May I have it, please?
absolutely. Anyway, but we really appreciate your time, and again, we don't want to take any more of your, you guys are doing important work here, and I almost gave you back a business card from someone. Here we go.
Well, like John said, we spent years trying to decipher all the documents, and we went to DEP and they had files of things, and I'd say we never completely closed the loop on it all, you know, especially the molybdenum. I mean, supposedly there's the little stream that there was some contamination along on this side, but I'm not sure how thorough the testing was, you know, outside of right here
yeah.
and where the wells are. So, but they did do shallow testing near the building, as I
They
told
did
you.
do shallow, yeah.
Yeah, and they looking for all kinds of things and didn't find.
We have water tests and soil tests pending through the University of Maine and through Cooperative Extension and through University of Maine Water Quality Lab. And we will certainly love to share those with you folks
Oh,
too,
that'd be
just in
great.
terms of
Fantastic.
being part of the bigger picture, because
And are you sampling all down to the water, or?
all over the
along
place.
the line.
Yeah, so, so that will, I don't know, maybe give us another picture, and of course, they wouldn't be, very official, but we'd love to share all that data with the committee or whoever is interested. And, perhaps, we actually have some water tests from way back from there, so that creates a nice baseline, and anything that we get currently will also be, a nice baseline, so we can test 2 years from now to see if there are any differences or whatever, so we'll be happy to share all of that.
Right.
Thanks.
You guys probably want to have your meeting now. though.
No.
You can feel free to stick around, we're gonna be talking about potential uses.
Yeah.
Yeah, we will.
Oh, yeah, no, we want to stick around.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for your time here, we really appreciate it.
Now it's for you, Max. It's all about you, Max.
All right, so everyone should have, well, not everyone, but everyone on the committee should have received a little summary document, about 2 pages, that just go through some various uses that Julie, myself, or some people at the town office have been hearing about, for some potential ideas for the Sylvania site and Hoffs's property. None of these are finalized, and you know what, I'll just get you a copy while I'm thinking about it.
That'd be great, thank you.
None of these are finalized uses, and this is just us merely saying this is what people have been talking about. I can go through each item, and then if people want to give their thoughts, that's fine. Is that how people want to do it? Do people have any thoughts before I even go through it?
I think if you go through it and we can give thoughts, and then we can also maybe have like an open forum where we could do one more last public event where people could come and give their thoughts.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, and that was something that would have been suggested. It's always a good idea. We go through the ideas, do a survey monkey, do a public forum, do something to get more engagement. So yeah, just going through some of these. Solar farm, that's something that's certainly come up quite a bit. I have talked with Andrew Carl, who did the revision energy estimate for the town of Waldeboro before we were even looking at this property. He noted that the substation is near capacity. About 0.9 megawatts of energy are left for a solar farm to be for a new solar farm before the substation's at capacity. I think it's noted the farm would generate an estimated 802 DCs a kilowatt of energy, or 660 AC kilowatts. So it's still, so it could fit in there, but we'd have to really know about that before we commit to that project. And I did confirm with Nathan Pelletier from Central Maine Power that if we decide to go over that 0.9 megawatts of energy, then it's going to be on us to pay for those substation upgrades to then handle that capacity. Should I just go through each item, or do people want to give their thoughts on solar farms, or?
I don't want to put that one to bed, because 0.9 megawatts is like 150 households worth of energy. It's a lot of energy, and it could cover a lot of the town's energy if it's not being covered by the other place. And that would take about 2.5 acres generally for that many solar panels, which is not a very big chunk of this. So I feel like, to me, that's still front and center. That's what the task force recommended, and like you said, the town would get preference potentially on using a portion of that 0.9 or all of it. And that would benefit everybody, not just the handful of people that put in the solar farm, you know, on their own. So I'd like to keep that one front and center personally.
I had sort of had a technical question. I'm not an electrical engineer, but there's a load here, and our load is very close to where those solar panels would be.
The substation capacity?
So, the load, no, the substation supplies the load currently
Okay.
to downtown. To the extent that you put in solar panels, that's gonna get first choice. It's not gonna go through the transformer and back again. It's gonna be on that small, probably 2 kV feeder system down the highway. Why does our electricity need to go into a substation when peak loads are always during the daytime, and we wouldn't be feeding back through the transformer at all? Why is that an issue?
That's a technical question.
That is
That's a technical question, and I do recall asking this to Andrew, I believe. He said all power goes to the substation. Like, I even asked about people who put solar panels on their roofs, you know, does that mean it's still going to the substation? He said, and again, I'll ask that. I'll confirm that.
I'm not sure about that.
I think we should get an opinion, a technical opinion on that. I don't
I can ask
don't
about
necessarily believe that answer. That sounds like a utility company.
No, that was
answer.
that was the
That was
actual solar
revision.
company.
That was revision.
Yeah.
Well, they may be regurgitating what Central Maine Power is telling them too. But again, if you put it on the grid, it doesn't matter where that electron comes. If it comes from here or here, to the extent that you put an electron in here that used to be here, that's not an increase. That's not an increase in power. Now,
So now this is based on us having it supply power to the downtown, correct?
it's supplied to the grid. It's supplied everywhere. Doesn't matter where you put the electrons in, they just go where they want to go. And since everything is downstream of those transformers, it's only going to reduce the amount of current that's going through those transformers. And it just doesn't make sense to me.
I mean, maybe we
So-
could.
Well, Gail has a.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Gail.
I think maybe we don't need an answer or clarity on the question right now. But if the
Right.
group thinks that we really want to keep solar front and center as an
And we
important
could
idea
have
for the
somebody come in
project,
and
then it'd be
That's what I
great
was
to have
thinking.
someone come in and help us
Talk to
answer
them.
that
Have a
question.
revision person.
Yeah.
we use Sundog Solar for our solar
Sundog.
field that we have up at the transfer station. I'm sure if we called them, they would come too.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
That's what I'll make a note of.
Danny Piper.
Danny Piper.
Do we want to take a consensus vote on which of these we like, or do you just want to kind of have the conversation?
I think
I want to endorse what Janet said. I think we don't want to drop the solar yet, but I don't know how everybody else on the committee feels, so
I mean,
how do you want to?
right now, this is just going through a list. I mean,
Sure.
I'm sorry if I'm speaking out of turn. Right now, I'm just reading through a list of what people have said. We don't really need to commit to one thing or the other. If people have questions about it, like the solar one that you were just asking, we're going to just do some more research on the matter and then come back and say, this is what we found. So we're not really committing to anyone just yet. And if we're going to do a forum later, more ideas might come up then,
But
too.
I think having the answers for at least the solar portion, since that was the recommendation of the committee, I think we should probably have somebody come in and meet.
Soon, because it's a
Right.
time-sensitive thing, given that
Right.
if the substation is an issue, we may be, you know.
And then if it's off the table for some reason, then we don't have to worry about it.
Yeah,
I wasn't suggesting we commit to anything. I'm just suggesting that we not waste time on things that
I
we
agree.
all think is a bad idea.
yeah.
I agree.
That's all
Let's
I'm
get an answer to that question about whether the substation is really a roadblock and then write it off.
But even, it may not be, though.
Right, it might
Right.
I
not
mean,
be.
that's still significant to have 150 households worth of energy
Right.
being produced on 2.5 acres,
Mhm.
which is roughly what you'd need. So I feel like, to me, that it's not either or. That's a use you could do along with a lot of other uses on this site potentially. So I just feel like we should keep that one front and center. And if that isn't an issue in the substation, it could potentially be larger, I suppose.
Okay. So I made the 2 notes about it, asking more about the grid potential and potentially bringing in someone to answer questions on those matters.
That's great.
The next item, sorry about that. Next item was a flea market. Julie, I think you've been having someone constantly asking about this. Something similar to what you see on Route 1.
What you see on Route 1, in Wiscasset, up there on the right, they would love a flea market. My problem is then it looks like a flea market all the time.
And it's not a very good place, given the traffic flows on that road compared to the flows on Route 1. And
Their
they're all-
theory is, if it's a flea market, build it and they will come.
Oh, okay, well. I'm not excited about that. That's my-
I could imagine a structure that might accommodate a flea market on occasion, but a
Not a
permanent flea
yeah, not a
market is
permanent.
not exciting.
It's so seasonal here, too.
Yeah.
Or like a seasonal, maybe on a Saturday, people come in, set everything, kind of like a farmer's market. People come in, set things up, and then take it down by the end
Yeah, I
of the day.
wouldn't want one, like, where their tables are permanent structures.
Right, no.
So a
Similar to
more
what you see on-
flexible structure that might be able to be a flea market on occasion.
So, I would suggest no to the flea market, but
Yeah.
potentially have a structure that could accommodate the flea market plus other things.
I think that'll actually come in a bit later.
As we mull
Kinda
over
like
these
the
various ideas,
Kinda
I'm
like
trying to
the
get in my
farmer's
mind,
market or-
it's not an either or, correct? Could this
No.
be
Correct.
multifaceted, multifactorial, so one idea and another idea could meld?
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
But if there's something somebody really hates,
Oh,
Right.
okay, so that's.
we
it's an
should really
exclusion.
say something, I think.
Yeah.
There's a lot of space. I think a lot of people
Yeah.
have been focusing more on that paved area that's already there, where the building used to be.
Yeah, right.
I think that's where a lot of people were focusing. But there is a lot more space on the site, so we can always talk more about that. It's seeing what fits really.
So the paved where all the concrete slabs are,
Mm-hmm.
that's just one parcel and it goes all the way, are we talking about?
That's just one part of the property. I think Janet has a map right over
here,
there.
John.
Right, yeah, I mean, it's, okay, so it's,
I mean-
okay, all right.
I mean, obviously, where it would work, we're not going to try and put something in a ledged area or build in a restricted area, obviously. All right, so that was it for flea market. Next is outdoor recreation. It's pretty much just as it sounds. This could vary in different things. Some people have said, let's move the basketball, tennis courts over there so that can be a new sort of waterfront park area. In the original proposal that was to Leadvance, I talked about how we could essentially preserve the shoreline zoning and just keep that as some recreational trails so that we're not developing all the way down there. And I did see the hand, I'll just get just a second.
Sure.
And this is one that can vary for what we want to do, passive recreation, or we can actually have some developed areas for more intense recreation. Johnny?
Well, I'm big on the solar, but I'm also very big on a river walk idea,
Mhm.
and I have been since the start. That to me should almost be front and center too. If we could do both, I don't think they're mutually exclusive, but a river walk of some type, you know, I guess recreation, river walk, I don't know how you'd want to parse it, but I think that would be a tremendous boon to the town.
That was the other major recommendation of the task force. I mean, basically solar and that.
Right.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Mark?
I was going to, just to clarify, move the tennis courts and basketball courts from where they are.
So, for example, 80 Gray right now has the tennis courts and have basketball court or basketball hoops. So, rather than just having them remain there, because the tennis courts are tied to federal land water conservation funding. So, one thing the town's been back and forth on for quite some time is whether to get another land water conservation fund grant to fix those tennis courts where they are right now, or if there is an alternative site that we could put them instead. Sylvania could be that alternative site,
Okay.
which is an option.
I'm just curious why you need an alternative site.
Because this is what happened in Damascata, where they had land water conservation funds to build something, I don't remember what it was, but they then didn't provide public access to that site anymore for recreation, and so they're no longer eligible to use those funds again.
Right, I've heard about that.
So,
And we don't know what exactly is happening with 80 Gray yet, so.
right. I mean, back when we had Tim Wells, he was looking at buying all 8 acres. Volunteers of America just needed where the building was. Who knows where it is nowadays? So that's just a back and forth.
Is there any documented interest in that kind of recreation opportunities in Waldoboro?
For a tennis court?
Tennis court and outdoor basketball court?
Pickleball court.
Last
Well,
meeting-
I would say honestly, it's not so much tennis as it is pickleball now.
Okay.
And
Marcus
if you're
Ball.
going to be in a residential area, I don't know if anybody watches the news, but like I think at Gorham and Portland, they put in the pickleball courts, and it's allowed now for the residents who
Right.
are near it. So I think that would, if we're going to commit to something like that, that also needs to be looked at.
I've had Marcus and some residents in Waldoboro and neighboring communities saying how they want to use the tennis courts already here for pickleball, but they're just not in ideal conditions,
Gotcha.
and we just want to
Okay.
make them safe for
Alright.
use.
And they used to get a lot of use when they were maintained, but I'm just curious about the rec center as the others, why it needs to be somewhere altogether new and not at the rec center by Miller.
Because one of the conditions for the Land Water Conservation Fund is that it has to be on a site that historically has not served a public recreational purpose. I'd have to find the exact language for it. So when we were getting the property, and I think I put that down in here maybe, or maybe I didn't, but one thing I noted to Ledvance was how we would consider putting new recreation field items at Sylvania to address the land water conservation requirement. So that's just something that has to be done before you actually own the property. Had we got Sylvania before I did that, and we decided now let's put all the land water conservation fund items there, we still would have to deal with the 80 Gray tennis courts because in their eyes it's still never technically moved.
Right, okay.
It's a fun federal process. Bob?
I'm just wondering whether we want to talk about an amphitheater that would complement the other things we're
That might have
talking
been on his
about.
list.
Is that on there?
Under, yes, outdoor
Sorry.
event space.
Okay,
We're
So
getting there.
We can get
my
there.
apologies.
And for outdoor recreation, there is definitely funding available. I think Marcus just sent me something for Lands for Maine's Future, being a great way of working with land water conservation funding. So there's definitely funding available, and I mean, there's plenty of area for just trails if that's the minimum. Are there any questions or research items for the outdoor recreation category?
Just a follow-up question. Funding available for the development, how about projections for maintenance and upkeep? Because apparently the ones at 80 Gray have not been upkept. Does the town have,
We'd have to do that.
does the town have the capacity to
do maintenance?
If you ask me that today, I'm gonna say no.
Okay. I mean, that's something we should
But
consider.
that's part of the overall recreation, that's part of the community center. If you build it, they will come. I mean, I think that's something that in general, the recreation department and the recreation committee and the select board and budget committee are gonna touch on this coming budget is, building, construction prices right now for the building that we would wanna build are astronomical. And I don't think we'd get the foundation in for what the voters approved based on when we took the pulse of the town. I don't think that the $2 million they approved would come close to maybe just doing some of the groundwork and some foundation work. So I think that's a large discussion we have to have, but yeah, we have to be able to maintain what we keep.
Sure.
And I think what happened with 80 Gray was it became such a political football in a way, even prior to this last go-round of tear it down or keep it. I think it got lost in the mix. But I wasn't here for that, so I can't really comment, other than that was the impression I got. Is my race car set under outdoor recreation?
I have it under
Okay, good.
outdoor event space. We can go to the, you said you didn't have too much time. We can skip to outdoor event space if you want, just because I think
Okay.
we've been touching on that quite a bit. So we'll come back to the list in just a second. Outdoor event space, that's on the back of the page. It's the last big category. This was just a bunch of different items that people were suggesting. Julie's favorite go-kart facility idea.
It's an electric go-kart, so you're not gonna hear anything.
That's
And it's
even-
very environmentally friendly.
And that's even one of the bullet
And quiet.
points.
It was a way to support the recreation budget.
And that's one of the bullet points items I put right down there. First of its kind in mid-coast, all electric, would make the town manager very happy.
I love the idea.
I
think it's great.
I was trying to think of it would just be really unique, that's for sure.
I think, now someone did actually suggest that too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and somebody else suggested it too, so
Right.
I wasn't the only one who had the idea.
Are you talking about go-karts, the little ones that I used to go on when I was 12?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you go to like,
You know,
There's a place in Portland you can race them.
I will tell you, the first place I ever went to was
Funtown.
was Funtown out in Saco.
I don't-
That was one of the most popular, you had to wait to get on
Yeah.
those go-karts.
I know it
I
sounds
mean,
really
it's crazy, but it was
But
an
like it's
experience.
something, I mean, it could be seasonal
A
and
seasonal thing, yeah.
short-lived, but it would probably make money for the recreation department.
I'd go on it.
So,
Get a good old-
I mean, they have some
go on it.
serious race ones, I wouldn't do that, but I figured at least if it was electric, it's environmentally friendly, and then it's not bad for the neighbors, they won't hear it.
So with something like that, the municipality would own and run that, or you would find a vendor to do that? I mean, are towns in the business of
maybe a
running
nonprofit
recreational
would have to
facilities?
do it.
Julie's retirement plan.
I don't know. I mean, you could run it. You could have a third party rent it from you for that case, but you could technically. I mean, utilities have been made out of less. I don't know. We'd have to explore. It was just an interesting. How could we? Trying to think of things that make people happy, and for the kids to attract. That's the one thing everybody's always saying is, how do we get people to come to Waldoboro, like from the EDC, and want to spend time downtown, or spend money in Waldoboro?
Well, Ruben's on YouTube right now. He actually has a very interesting idea of incorporating more intense political items. 50-50 votes get settled by go-kart. Janet?
I just I haven't been on go-kart since I was a kid, and it wasn't in a park, and it was like illegal on the road. But what kind of footprint do you need
It would be right where you could do it, like right on where,
on the pad?
yeah. If
So
you,
it's not big area really, like an
No,
acre.
it's not
Whatever size you
huge.
want, really.
Okay.
Curvy.
Yeah.
It's all curves. It's like it's a very small area, but it is fun. They only let a couple on at a time. So.
Okay.
Yeah, you just throw some tires around the periphery so that people don't crash into a
It's just
rock wall or
it was
something.
just a thought.
I
It was
just-
one of those
I'm just trying to
interesting,
visualize
funny.
it.
I think we should take a trip down to the racetrack and get on them and see.
In good weather.
My mother was 82 and she did it with my grandson, so it wasn't that horrible. They let an 82-year-old on the track. You don't go real fast.
No, not really. It's all about the turns there. So go-karting, that was the first one. There's just food truck venue if it's going to tie into more of the outdoor recreation park ideas. And we touched on this a bit earlier with the flea market, but construction of sort of a big open space structure, so a roof, not really that many walls, to house activities like farmers markets or the seasonal flea markets, auctions, ice rink, public gatherings. And the best example I think that exists right now is one in Kennebunk, the Waterhouse Center. I only just realized they actually have a live stream camera of it right now, actually. So you can see people who are on the ice rink right now. And Camden's looking at a very similar thing for their former tannery site. Bob mentioned the Outdoor Amphitheater, and I think that was something we also included in our suggestions to Lead Vance. I think that was like behind the Hoffs' house. is where
Correct,
we were
because
looking.
it's a natural.
Slope type area.
Yeah.
Parking area on the concrete pad, just, people park there and get to use the rest of the area for the actual recreation or other outdoor event spaces. And then, or it could be perhaps behind the Hoffs' house. And then dog park, dog park and skate park were like one or two people saying it, and those would need a lot more consideration. The skate park, because of insurance reasons, and the dog park, well, Julie can talk about dogs.
The river, people might get upset about the river.
Yeah.
I know the Shellfish Committee would have huge issues with that.
Bob, did you have any thoughts on the outdoor amphitheater? You brought that up a bit earlier.
I just like the idea of putting it behind the Hoffs' house. We could become a concert venue, something that Waldo Theater could buy into and help us organize with events, maybe. Just a thought. Instead of having musical events in the theater in the summertime, you have them outside in an amphitheater and probably have more people.
Yeah.
Parking could be a problem. I don't know whether that's something.
We'll rent you out a field, it'll be all right.
Yeah, that's a good idea. We could herd your sheep for you.
Yeah, we'll sell kebabs.
Your sheep will sing, right?
I think the idea too was to move then Waldeboro Days there.
Right, that would be the new.
That would be in the new where we would have Waldeboro Day.
Yeah. Yeah, we always have music on Waldeboro Day. It's just usually a portable.
It would be nice to have our own
It
bandstand,
would
like,
be.
kind
Yeah.
of.
Gazebo and everything.
Honestly, the amphitheater gazebo does lend itself a little bit nicer there. There was a huge issue about some people wanted the gazebo right here in front of town office, but then it was the traffic concern with the noise and things and parking, so, I mean, I don't think you get as much.
I'm thinking of something like the hat shell, like they've got down the
The
Esplanade.
clamshell, a
Call it
clamshell.
a clamshell.
Yeah.
But, you know, you've got good
Clamshell.
acoustics, you've got,
Yeah.
Portland Orchestra might come up here and do something. You'd have some professional performances there.
And on YouTube, it looks like Ruben's also suggesting that to have it as an outdoor event space would mean it'd be a great place for also weddings and rent it out for some private events, maybe. I mean, you wouldn't close off the whole area, but some people may want to have a nice little wedding in the park or graduation ceremony.
Down by the water.
Johnny?
Just an idea, I thought about this after the last meeting. Is there a possibility maybe you just let it lie fallow for a while until something presents itself that's, just let it lie fallow, maybe have a little maintenance, but do nothing with it right this now until maybe something really hits us.
Well,
Doing nothing is doing something.
right.
You're right, Johnny. I mean, do we wait for a proposal here from a public-private partnership sort of deal? Or do we try to do this ourselves?
So the method of my madness when this was initially talked about was for the first year or so, it's just green it up, as I like to call it.
Yeah.
Sure.
We'd like to
Make
green it up.
Yeah.
Make it look presentable,
Right.
clear the weeds,
Right.
make sure it's actually something you could drive by and not, cringe at the sight of. and also work with the Conservation Commission, Public Works, maybe Mid-Coast Conservancy, to have the trail system as well. A lot of passive work, and then while we're doing that, we can begin looking at some other different uses, because by the time we do decide on a use, the time we do want to actually get forward on something, it will have probably been a year or two down the road at that point, and people will have.
And we still have to go through the DEP does have to approve what we do there.
Right.
And, but I think it gives us, I think we need to be able, I think what the committee should do is really think about what we want to see. Because we do get people who do come in, and some are just easy no's, you can't do that there. But I think if we can give people guidance, there might be some concerned people who really would like to do something good for the town. And that would be, hey, you know, this is where we've designated, the next time somebody wants to fundraise for a gazebo, we can say, this is where the gazebo should go. But I also think that we do need to like maybe pursue that was it bentonite? Bentonite. Cap on there, like maybe we don't want all of that paved area. We want to cover a good portion of it, and that's something that we could reapply for at the DEP. Maybe that's one of our goals too, is just to get that green space with some, wildflowers or something on it that would look nice.
Bob?
As a segue to that, it wouldn't hurt to retain the services of a landscape architect. Set our priorities as a committee, one of which is the trail system, possibly. One of which is to take care of that pad, that ugly pad. And maybe it's a bentonite cover, maybe it's something else, but a landscape architect might come up with ideas and solutions that are nice, that look good, and are cost effective. And they would know stuff that we don't.
And you can put that in the budget on
Yes.
Tuesday night, okay?
Yeah,
That concrete pad can't be disturbed, is that what I read somewhere?
Yeah.
Right.
but you
Even
can
though
cover it.
but you can
DEP has
cover it.
said now that we can cover it. That's different. They didn't say that before.
And that's good.
That is
Yeah.
good.
Sure.
So it sounds to me like we are actually talking about multiple uses rather
Right.
than a single use. And if our initial thought is, well, sort of the low-hanging fruit are some trails. Seems to me like if we're committed to maintaining a natural area that's oriented toward things like hiking and walking, that we should be thinking about other uses that are compatible with that. So like, I love your go-karts, Julie.
I know, it's okay. It
But
was just
if
a
I was
thought.
gonna go for a hike by the river, I wouldn't want there to be a go-kart facility right there. But solar panels would be fine. So I guess when I'm trying to think of this, I'm trying to think not of, do we want this or this or this, but of 3 or 4 potentially compatible uses, and then planning out a 5 to 10 year timeline for what we can do cheaply and quickly, and what is gonna take some fundraising
And grant writing.
Grant writing, right, yeah.
That's what you had the motion to me about, yeah.
Yeah.
And you're right, that,
Okay.
I'm sorry, Mark, I did see your hand. Go
And
ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't even, did you have your hand up?
I didn't
Well,
know.
I have to apologize, I just raised my hand.
Okay.
We've talked about the open site, but we haven't said anything about the use of the Hofs's house. And I think I asked at the last meeting, and I apologize, I forget the answer. Is the Hofs's house still a viable structure?
If you were to ask my Department of Public Works director, he would say no, but he is not a contractor. So I think that has to be evaluated.
Love
Yeah.
to.
This is right up your alley.
I'd love
Yeah,
to take a
maybe we
peek.
should have Matt take a peek.
Perfect, let me know, we
And
can set something up.
along those lines, I asked if the Historical Society had any interest, and they don't have any interest in the property, but if there's anything still inside the house.
So I was going to have a conversation with one of their representatives, Billy, because
Yeah.
we're gonna see him at the meeting. Apparently, there's stuff in the shed still
Okay.
that we have control over. We've had people come and ask to go through the house numerous times, we've said no. But the Historical Society should go through and,
Bill was the one who mentioned it, so
yeah.
if you're
No,
talking
I was
him,
waiting
that's
to
fine.
see him,
Okay,
because
great,
he'll be here Thursday night.
excellent, thank you.
Did Richard Hofstas talk to you about,
I've not heard from Richards.
he's told me they've got family stuff still in there.
I have not heard a word
Okay,
from any of the family.
okay,
But if they
We can
do,
reach out to them.
we, yeah,
I'll
Max
reach
can
out to
reach
him.
out to him.
okay.
So just finishing up the list, going back to the original thing, I think we had training center and commercial development left. For the training center, this was something that Fire Chief Paul Smeltzer just approached and asked about. Mid-Coast firefighters have just been looking for a training facility for quite some time, and he doesn't mind coming to one of these meetings or talking more about extensively about what would be required there. When I spoke with the Maine DEP, he said it would be allowed, but it definitely has to be under some careful consideration, and pretty much a perimeter would have to be set up, make sure it's hooked up to the sewer system. We'd have to be sure that the utility district can handle such a facility, but it's not outside the realm of possibilities, and they wouldn't want to put it on the pad actually. They'd probably be aiming, maybe using if it's possible to repurpose the Hoff's house, repurposing that and then having it, the training facility grounds behind it actually. So that's roughly what they were thinking. And that was the short of it. Again, Paul's the one who would have more to discuss about that item. Any quick thoughts on, yes?
Sorry, one quick question. Would they conceivably pay to restore the Hoff's house to do that, or is that something the town would have to take on?
That
Do you
is,
know?
that is something I think Paul would have to answer.
Okay.
To my recollection, this is all the Midcoast Fire,
I don't think they were gonna use the house as the
Or
training.
you said they might.
well, the training facility, they might use the house as the, more of like classrooms and something.
Oh, okay.
So that's something I'd have to check with him on. They said it wouldn't be something where the town takes the entire financial burden, but I don't know how much that means. But
Can we get a little bit better definition of what he means, whether it is just a training facility with classrooms? Every time you fly into Logan Airport, out in the far end near the water, there's a mock-up of a plane that every once in a while they set on fire and put out.
Yep,
Right.
that's the rough idea.
Is that what he wants?
Yeah, they'd have a little contained area for practicing burning and putting out fires.
In the center of
And that's
town,
why they
I
did,
see.
and that's why they didn't want it on restricted area. I'm already seeing some head shakes.
Firefighting training facilities are now on the radar screen in terms of contaminants because the extraordinary amount of PFAS chemicals, forever chemicals that are in firefighting foam. So I would be shocked if the DEP thinks
Yeah,
this is a
me
good
too.
idea. I'm not sure if it's okay that I'm chiming in on that, but I'd just be very surprised if the DEP would think that one would fly, doing additional contaminants without serious groundwater, non-point source pollution, containment, and all sorts of other things going
And
on.
that's actually what Max Lewick did say from the DEP.
Yeah.
There would be, I think, a foot elevation to keep everything in it, and it'd have to be connected to the sewer system.
Right.
Which, again, is why he said he was fine with it being near the Hoff's house, because the sewer's already right there.
Doesn't mean it's fine for the neighborhood.
Right.
But this says you can't have any educational institutions. I don't know if that would, training would qualify as that question, but.
Yeah, again, I think he said it was gonna be more like a quick night course or something. It wasn't gonna be some permanent people there every single day type thing. Again, this is just me repeating Paul's words. He can certainly, if that's something people wanna ask more questions about, he's fine coming to one of these meetings. But I definitely see a lot of concern on that one. Any other questions before moving on?
Got an idea,
Colonel?
Mike,
Yeah, sure.
if I could share. A place where members of our town could garden.
A community
Make an
garden?
area, 30-foot plots, divide them up. The town would only have to disc it up in the spring, which break the ground up a little bit, and have water available. So people go over and get a bucket full of water and take it to their, and also the town would have to mark it off, A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe 30-foot plots, nothing big, but, if somebody, let's say at Sproul Block, wanted to have a garden, where do they go? Or anywhere else, anybody else that, they did that in a community where I was from before, and it was really popular.
Yeah, put that down. putting that down under the suggestions.
Could be
Might have
raised
to be
beds
raised
too.
beds.
Raised beds, yeah.
Yeah.
Because of the
That's a good idea.
contamination.
I know someone approached the library at one point to do that, we couldn't go along with it. 'Cause
Well, we
it
tried
wasn't
that
well put
here.
together, But,
When we had the farmer's market
yeah,
here.
I
that's
remember
right,
those.
that's right.
Johnny?
Max, I've just been reading in the paper, you know these PFAS that are all over the state? Have we ever tested that for these forever chemicals?
Julie, I'm gonna give you that question.
Because it seems like they're ubiquitous up in,
Well, so according to the map, there are only 2 sites in Waldoboro that have them,
yes,
and that would be our transfer station facility, the landfill,
yeah.
and the wastewater treatment plant.
Yeah.
And from anecdotally speaking with Stan, our construction officer, our
Code enforcement
code
officer.
enforcement officer, everybody pretty much knows which farms brought them in, and
Right.
it wasn't a big deal in Waldoboro to do that. There's a couple in Nobleboro, I think. But if you look at the map, if you go on and look at the map, you can see at least where they had permits to dump
Right.
or spread.
I'm just thinking of maybe the stuff that went under the radar. I saw on the news where these poor dairy farmers in central Maine bought some feed.
Yeah, because
And they can't now, those people, they gotta milk their cows for a year and they can't sell it.
so it's the sludge, I think, that they
Something, yeah.
sprayed, right? Am I right?
Yeah,
close
I
to
actually
that?
work at that farm, and it's Misty Brook. There's
Right.
4 of them now, and that farm came up on the sludge map, but it was actually hay that we had brought in from another farm that was highly contaminated.
Right.
So all of our products are off the
I
shelf.
just think that that's a shame.
It's
I mean,
horrible, but it's
just-
so widespread, and
Yeah.
it's definitely an issue in Maine because we have
Right.
so much like industry, but it's all over the world.
Okay.
So-
Yeah, I just-
It is all over the world.
Good luck, have
Most of
fun,
the
be safe.
contamination
Thank
was
you.
from a paper
He's
mill
my
that
muscle
made
tonight.
treated papers.
I've been
Paper
chickened
that
out.
was treated to be waterproof. But it is everywhere. It's
It's
under
everywhere.
Scotch Guard. You know, when you sprayed it on your clothes for water repellency,
Yeah.
that's PFAS.
Gore-Tex.
Flame retardants, Gore-Tex.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
So the last category, and then I'm all set, is Julie and Bob just had to leave for budget items. Was commercial development. This is just a general category. Ruben actually has an example in the chat there of a data center that you probably heard about going up to Millinocket, where Architon has been working on redeveloping the old mills there. That's something that Ruben suggested. But this could also be very similar uses, just a small little incidental building where someone just goes for basic woodworking or lease out the building essentially for something that they can't really do elsewhere in the community. Like a forge, maybe someone lives in a residential neighborhood
Yeah.
and they can't put up a basic forge or blacksmith thing, they could rent out a space there. And these are fine. Oh, and there have been some businesses that have asked to put such a building on the pavement area, which I said, well, you know, if you're looking for an immediate thing, you're probably not going to get an immediate thing because we might do nothing, we might find some other uses, it's going to be a while. But it's certainly an option for someone to develop an area that would be acceptable, that we don't want to have too much traffic there to help pay for some other costs. And Max Lewick did say that commercial structures are fine, but it just has to be not a highly dense thing, not another Sylvania essentially. You know, something that's not going to have too much impact of digging into the ground. Well, if it does dig into the ground, it's not going to disturb the soil, and obviously hook up to the sewer and water. And I mentioned Ruben's data center, so I think that's it for the commercial development. Nothing too extreme really for that one. It's just more incidental, leasing of space, storage if that's something people want to explore, but nothing crazy. Any thoughts on that? Commercial's kind of a open shut one on that one. So that's the general categorized list, and I do have the notes that everyone had. Pretty much getting someone in from who's experienced in the solar field to ask about our substation capacity items. Should I?
Well, I think we
Or
should
the
ask Central Maine Power and not the solar developer.
I did ask Nathan Pelletier from Central Maine Power.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think we should have Sundog come in. They'll know, I mean, you knew about the brouhaha with substations. And I think there is an issue. Last year, it was a huge brouhaha. All these people built solar farms, and then CMP said, oh, no, we can't handle this load. We're going to charge you more for all the hookup fees and stuff. It was a big controversy. So I'm not sure it's completely been settled yet. So I think it is good to know if we're up against the limit or not. And I don't think CMP's the one to ask, unfortunately. Or CMP and Sundog, maybe. But not
Hopefully
just-
CMP is not listening in on this meeting. But yes, when I did reach out to CMP and said, can you please give us very basic information on this, their immediate response was, all right, if you give us $300 non-refundable dollars, we will be sure to tell you this. And I say, well, I don't want to upgrade the substation. I just want to know, is this something that's going to happen? Like, I'm asking a very basic,
Yeah,
genuine
they're
question.
not
Classic.
transparent.
They wanted money before they would talk. So I'll get Sundog. If you want me to find someone else, maybe a former CMP employee, I can try that. But yeah, that's the limits on that one. And
Is there a way to find out-ish what the
Cost is gonna be?
cost of doing a substation upgrade would be? I mean, is it really prohibitive, or?
It's expensive.
It's really bad.
If you go online, you can see what they're charging other people that are putting in solar farms. You know, I feel like if we did it, we should do the smaller scale, which is
Right.
still pretty big.
Right.
I think 4,000 or 5,000 panels is a lot of panels personally. So, but we can decide on that.
but I can try and find the price of the substation expansion, because I think Andrew from Revision said that we actually are unique for having one of the more smaller substations in the area. So that might be another factor of the whole thing.
It'd be hundreds of thousands, if
Oh,
not more. It's a
okay.
lot.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, CMP tries to offset the loss in revenues by solar coming in, that's their
Yeah,
goal.
they don't
Got
like
it.
the solar coming in, so.
Okay, okay.
Other than that, I just have the notes for the other ones, and I'll make sure to keep them in the minutes. I included the Colonel's suggestion for community farm, or community garden, I'm sorry. And then that's pretty much it.
Max, you mentioned earlier about a community forum to try and solicit additional responses. Is there a plan
Right.
for that right now? Or?
Nope, that's something we can get going now, pretty much. We can start scheduling something. I mean, weather is sort of picking up, so people are probably going to be fine to drive again. And we do have our remote option for people who still want to attend remotely from home. So that's just certainly something, if this committee wants to do that, just
Do we want to do that at the beginning of the process and have a wide open forum, or something when we've got some possibilities narrowed down to talk about a few specific things, or
It-
both?
well, it
They're
doesn't-
just really different things.
right. It doesn't hurt to get a pulse of the town from the outset, just to be sure that no one's going to say that they want one specific use for the property.
Yeah.
You know, people are probably going to come here and say, let's do use A, use B, or use C, and that might just help determine what to do going forward. Mark?
So when the Sylvania committee was first meeting, the part I enjoyed the most was going out and talking to the former employees, doing those kind of surveys with them. I'd be happy to do something like that for surrounding neighbors, people in the housing project there, and the businesses and neighbors there, if that would be useful.
Yeah, when the forum does get close to it, it would be nice to probably make sure, especially the neighbors are notified and are here. I mean, that's just my own personal thoughts. The neighbors are going to be the ones who are going to come to who are going to get a notice for the planning board meeting anyways.
Gotcha.
It'd be nice to get them. And Sarah Rich, I think, is actually a neighbor. But yeah, that's likely something that we'll do going forward. Do we want a form, or is it sort of a survey monkey, send a survey out to the entire town type thing? What are we thinking?
What is the reach of the Survey Monkey given?
Survey Monkey is pretty much, we'd have link, we'd advertise it and say, go here and fill out the survey. We'd have physical copies that we can give to people who do not have internet access like we've done in the past.
What
The-
level of response do we usually get from that kind of outreach?
Surveys, we usually get about 15 to 20%.
That's pretty good.
That's based
That's
on,
actually great.
I think, the last 3 surveys we've done.
Yeah.
we could do the form, and then we can do the survey, depending on the response of the form.
Or both. My guess is we'd
I
get
think
more
both.
responses on the survey.
But people would feel better about the forum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
could be both.
So we'll think of a form. And then to answer your question from a bit earlier, when we do get closer and closer to having a sort of a master plan for Sylvania, then we'd hold one more forum to at least say this is what the big plan is.
Great.
Okay, so that's some things Julie and I will get scheduled for Sylvania. And that's it for the uses items. The only other things I wanted to just be sure we go on the list on before everyone loses attention is the minutes and officers. We didn't really, I don't think anyone was chosen for officers last meeting, or if that's something you want to actually have for this committee. So a chair, a vice chair.
So, I've served on other committees, and Bob has been chairman of the committee. He was on the water committee chair, but he's not now. The water committee continues, but he's not anymore. Do we need, would Julie be a voting member of the committee? So if we're going to elect officers, shouldn't everybody be here?
Julie,
I guess so.
I would assume Julie is not a member of the committee because she's not a resident of the community of Waldeboro.
Of the town, okay.
She's a town manager, but she's not a voting member to my knowledge. As for Bob and the colonel, I don't know if when the motion was made, select board members counted as voting members or not.
Do we need a chair? I mean,
You don't.
I feel like if we, I was the chair of the task force for 4 years, I think it was, and it was a lot of work actually, but I don't know. I'm just questioning whether we need one.
You can just defer it for now, and it'll just still be Julie and I kind of leading the meeting
I mean,
until you decide you want to
An
chair.
agenda would be useful, for instance.
An agenda would be
somebody-
useful, I agree, but that's more of a secretary's function than a
Yeah, and the
chair.
minutes,
Well, the
doing those
agenda I would have had out. I thought Julie was handling all those items, but with the budget, this was something that I kind of got told last minute.
things. Yeah,
So I'll make sure to have an agenda next
How would
time.
that go, Max? Would we nominate individuals here that we think would be appropriate, or how does that work? And then have a vote, or just
Yeah.
they
Yep.
would accept it?
Pretty much, just say, I motion so-and-so is the chair, someone seconds, and then that person's
So I
unfortunately
would
the chair.
nominate Mike, and then we would have a round.
Someone would have to second it,
Someone,
yes.
I got you, okay.
But again,
I
I
would
think,
probably decline.
yeah. Part of it is,
If elected, I will not run.
we'll, s-
Yeah, if nominated, I will not run. If elected, I will not serve.
Thanks, LBJ.
I'll check to see if Bob and or Julie are considered voting members in this committee. And then we can talk about it again next time if we want. And the only other item was just the minutes that I sent out. Just a simple motion, second for approval, unless there are some
I
amendments.
also move to accept your meeting
Second.
minutes.
Second. All those in favor? Motion passes.
Very, very good. Thank you.
Just a quick question, is the committee full, or is there room for new committee members?
I guess I have to see where Bob and Dan and Julie
I'm
can.
just saying we have other invested stakeholders.
I think we can have more members as long as, we just go through the usual process for selecting members and everything.
Takes a while.
We're not Waldeboro taxpayers yet.
Okay.
Thinking we will be.
That's the other part of it.
We'll keep you informed.
No, we'd love to continue to come to these things and certainly be involved. If we're here, I'd love to be involved.
I lived there for a while, and
So-
it was Malay Wood Road.
Oh, I'm
So
on
if you-
carding machine.
Sounds like you're open
Carding,
to the
that's-
public
Yeah.
until then.
So, we're all set? Recording?
Thanks, Max.
Yeah,
Yeah, Malay Road, right?
Thank you for being a
The
public.
name sounds, that's a bigger room,
It's a
so.
very long road,
Yeah.
yes it is. Yeah, and then I got a place right on Mary